dorky that way. So what is Nitro Brew?
It's a genius marketing campaign because it comes in these kegs and they just ship it to whatever Starbucks has them. But it's, I don't know, they say nitrogen. I don't even know. I just follow my clan that I work with and they head across the street and we go get some Nitro Brews.
But it's already pre-brewed.
Pre-brewed, they just like serving beer, they just, they even can empty the keg or whatever and have to load it up. So
do you think part of it is feeling like you're getting a beer, but you're actually getting a coffee?
I don't know what it is. I think it's just like coffee consumers are always looking like for the next trend or like, have you tried this new kind of coffee?
Yeah.
It really gives you an edge or whatever.
So Nitro Brew is the next thing.
It's tweaky, yeah, for sure. That's a good face for it. Yeah.
So Mike Erikson.
Hello. Nice to see you.
It's good to see you too.
What a great way to have a conversation and just catch up.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I was thinking about it. The last time we saw each other was in the sauna.
Yeah.
Yeah, met up in the sauna randomly.
Yeah, I hope I didn't wreck your sauna. I mean, you and Tim showed up. You're like, this is the first time we've had alone forever, and then it's just me in the sauna. Hi, guys!
No, it was great.
Yeah.
But we did tell you how I really don't like sauna talkers.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was totally me.
Yeah, well, we were sauna talking, but we were the only ones sauna talking at the time.
Yeah, that was a half an hour session for me. I needed a lot of water to recoup after that. You ever have a sauna headache in the evening where you just you went a bit too far? And
did you go too far that day?
I think I went a bit too far.
Yeah, we were chatty
afterwards.
Does taking Tylenol go against the whole sauna purpose? Like the sauna inflicted a Tylenol headache.
It goes against mine. I don't like taking painkillers if I don't have to. I mean, I think I don't know, but I know that ibuprofen's not very good because it wrecks your gut biome, is what I've heard. Yes. So I don't know. Acetaminophen seems... I don't try to take it too often, but I had to take another one yesterday from a few sauna sessions.
So that says that you're dehydrated, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm the worst at drinking water. So for those of you watching on video, I'll have you know that Mike and I both have a glass of water in front of us because we're trying to look very healthy and hydrated.
We should take a sip even.
Yeah, okay, look at this.
Actually, I've become the water guy at my workplace too, where I do my standard work. I don't know why I'm being weird about it. I don't work full time, so I was going to say my standard 40 hours, but I don't. Anyways, I'm the guy that walks around and goes, "Are you hydrated? Drink some water." Took on that role. It's a pretty easy role to take on.
Yeah, you're like the water man.
The water guy. Yeah.
Water guy. So actually, Mike, one of the reasons why I really wanted to have you on the podcast, other than the fact that I just enjoyed chatting with you, but when we first met, I feel like you were in a place in your life that is drastically different than the place that you are now, in my perspective, that you've made some really big life changes. And one of those has been not working full time and moving into more creative work. Yeah,
actually, for sure. That was right at a transition, not maybe a transition as much as almost even I wouldn't say breakdown, but somewhere between those two things.
Yeah, you had your second child. So that would be...
Yeah, that's right. She was just... so that was right... That was a huge moment in my life. Yes. So my first child, also a huge moment, obviously. Your first one is... big changes happen. You kind of have to learn to reshift your life. And then the second one, for me... forced me to look at my anxieties, and so I don't know how much we talked about that. Quite a bit, actually, from what I remember. So that was kind of one of the moments. You had she sends a few questions for me preliminary in the evening, and one of them was like, what's a problem or an issue that you had to overcome from the past? And that was the one that I was kept coming up, that I was like, that's probably the major one that I've had to overcome.
Which is crazy that that's also when we first met.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, and yeah, okay.
So
tell us a bit about that.
After there, I don't know. I mean, we could definitely pinpoint that date because it was Bonnie and Garrett's wedding.
Yes.
But But yeah, so basically, I had an anxiety attack. I shouldn't talk to the camera. I'm just used to vlogging.
I know. So when you're vlogging, you're like, you have a great relationship with the camera.
The camera's a nice. He's got a nice ND on there. Yeah, I had not a nervous breakdown. I had an anxiety attack about 4 hours after we had our second child. Jude was born, which is a home birth, and it was supposed to be just stay in our home, and everything went well, except for 4 hours later, I collapsed and thought I was either having a heart attack or my lungs. I just couldn't breathe, and then had to go to the hospital in an ambulance, and got all checked out, and everything was fine. And I still didn't really know what was going on until this angel of a nurse came and took me aside kind of when I was released and said, I think that what you're going through is an anxiety issue, and there's help for this. There's medication, and even then, being confronted with that, I was like, there's no way this isn't just anxiety. And then I had another anxiety attack after I got home.
Same day?
Yeah, the same day. So we had the birth in the middle of the night.
Okay.
And then when I went down to finally sleep, I also hadn't slept a few days leading up to this because I was just really nervous. I was kind of just a wreck because I wasn't dealing with my anxiety and didn't even really know I had an issue. And then I had another anxiety attack that day after I got home from the hospital. And I was like, well, if this is anxiety, I should be able to breathe through this and it'll be fine. And then I did, and then it was fine. So I was like, oh man, okay. This is a bigger problem than I thought it was. And now that I have this perspective, this has been a problem my whole life.
Wow.
And
that's huge.
Yeah.
Like a big realization, especially after having a baby.
Well, I was like 33 years old. Like you'd think you would already know that. It was just, but I mean, the way that I feel like anxiety works with me is it's a hidden thing until, or maybe even any kind of psychological disorder, like until it's kind of labeled, you're not really sure where you fit in. And then as soon as you kind of have a label, then you can kind of start dealing with it at that time.
I like to think about it as it's just the way that you thought you were. Like it's just your normal.
Yeah.
And then only when that normal becomes so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's when you realize like, oh, this isn't normal because now I'm so uncomfortable in this normal that I need help. And so, yeah, I mean, many of us go a long time functioning in a way that we think is stable and normal.
Yeah.
And then when something happens and we develop an awareness like, holy shit, I don't actually have to feel this way or be this way.
Yeah, it was, I mean, for me, it was kind of like you go through your whole life, kind of your 20s especially, kind of being indestructible. Mm-hmm. And like, everything that's wrong is wrong with other people, not yourself. And it was the first time that, I don't know if it was the first time. I mean, I'm married, so obviously it's been pointed out that I'm doing things wrong before. But it was the first time that, I said it again, that I was confronted that I'm not perfect.
Right.
And it's just like, oh, geez, I'm not perfect. I have all these things I need to work on. And then that kind of started my pursuit of just kind of finding a happier me. Not necessarily like, lots of people you hear about being happy all the time. And I don't really believe in being happy all the time, but at least being comfortable with me and setting up the things that I need in order to be able to live a functioning life. So I'm not collapsing and having anxiety attacks anymore.
But then those shifts that you made, and I know we'll talk about that maybe in bigger depth in a bit, but you made like big whole life shifts. Like,
I did. Yeah. Well, I think that because I think a lot of, I don't know. This is all stuff that I really need to analyze more. And I feel like I'm just kind of, I think you're always kind of working through stuff and getting, as you feel like you're accomplishing something within yourself and growing, then you just come to the next hurdle. But at that time, I think a lot of where these feelings were coming from is I saw my time my free time kind of, I say with every kid you lose a hobby. And I had lots of hobbies and lots of interests. And I saw this time kind of, the free time dwindling, and didn't feel like I was really connecting with my creative side as much as I thought that I should be. In order to be happy, I've realized, I think I knew at the time, and I realized since certainly that creativity and exploring my creativity is part of my process and part of how I deal with my anxiety almost.
Yeah.
But then that's walking an edge too, because then I'm also on the flip side of that. I've noticed that creativity and the way that I look at that is producing and creating things. But I also have to be careful that I'm not getting my self-worth from creating things.
Like a finished product, you mean?
A finished product or something. Like I've been really focused on my YouTube channel. And, it takes a lot of time, and it's not like I'm not putting out videos all the time. And sometimes I struggle with, or I have been struggling with, like feeling kind of like down about myself because I haven't like put a video out recently, or made a song, or written a song, or like done a creative activity, which is tough if you put your self-worth on creating those things when, I've since had another child, and, I have a full family life, and there's some nights or days that I'm not going to have the opportunity. So it's about being okay with who I am all the time,
right, rather
than being okay as long as I've satisfied these goals or whatever.
Right. So that rigid structure.
Yeah.
That if you're not producing, or if you're not completing this task, that in itself can create anxiety and self-doubt.
Exactly. Yeah. That just feeds off that. Yeah, so that's kind of where I've been lately, and just like trying to be okay with not constantly, I think that social media has a big part to play in this, and taking a step back from social media, it lets you kind of see things for the way they are. Through this last, I don't know what it was, there was something in politics or something just brought me, always triggered me on Facebook about a couple months ago. And then you start learning about Facebook and how the algorithm works and how it feeds to people who get angry. Like that's how they feed or populate your news feed, is what they think is going to trigger you, because then you stay on it for longer.
How do they do that?
Well, they just know like what's like for me, because a lot of what I have, my friends and the people that I associate and the stories that I like are kind of left leaning. They'll put these stories of right-wing extremist or whatever that says ridiculous things, or that they'll populate it purposely so that you will get triggered, because then there's more comments and you stay on the platform for longer.
Are you sure? Like this is a legit
thing? It's a real thing. Oh yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, it leans that side. That's the way that it leans.
So you're talking about like stories, news stories or things. Obviously not people in your friend group. So when, on Facebook you have news feeds of other people's lives or comments, but then you're talking about the additional things that get put in your newsfeed. Yeah,
well, I mean, I think that they say that it used to be 10% of of your posts get seen by your friends, or 10% of your friends see your posts.
Yes.
And I think now I'm not sure. Now we're getting into the grounds where I'm not sure how it works. I just know that it leans to the negative. So I will get posts from my friends that have differing opinions. And I try to be okay with that, because I want to know the other side of the opinions. But sometimes when they're just like so ignorant and so like unresearched, just like, here's this thing I'm going to post, I get triggered. And so anyways, where I'm going with this is I had to take some time off social media. I just like deleted Facebook from my phone. And I just left Instagram and didn't touch it for a couple weeks. And man, like those first 2-3 days when I'm just reaching for my phone every probably every minute at the beginning, or every 5 minutes for sure. And then, and just kind of recognizing, oh, those things aren't on there anymore. Or even just like, oh, geez, I'm doing it again, and just paying attention to that.
Isn't it crazy?
It scared me.
It's
It
scary.
really scared me, because at least I was paying attention and I was trying to see that. But I just see a lot of people that aren't doing that. And I worry about, the kids coming up who are just brought up already addicted to this thing. And that's what it is. It was an addiction, thoroughly an addiction. And after 2 weeks, it was a completely different attitude I had with it. I just felt like there's also an anxiety that I feel when I do, when somebody does post something that I disagree with. When I debate them, every time I post on there, I have an anxiety about that post. I'm not sure if it's because I'm thinking about how are people going to see that post, or is it going to be misread, or is this just going to, do I just not like confronting people?
It's also a form of conflict, right? Even if you're communicating in a collegial way, it's still conflict.
It is
conflict itself is really
that's
difficult.
always been something that I've been uncomfortable with in the past.
And it's conflict, sorry to interrupt, but it's also conflict without human connection.
Yeah.
Like, there's one thing to have conflict and be looking at each other, and I can read your body language, and I can bank on the fact that we are in this space together.
Yeah.
But when we're doing it online, you don't get to have that assurity that you're communicating with someone.
Yeah, on social media is what I've heard it coined as, and I like that term. So I saw that and just started rethinking everything I was doing. So I make videos, and I started making videos through Instagram, because Instagram gives you 1 minute videos. And I was like, oh, wow, what a great way to explore that. So I used to make all these music videos, because I'm a drummer as well, as you know. An
awesome drummer.
Oh, well, thank you. I play for great people, so that helps. When I started doing that, then I'm the type of person that want to do well, so I'll go and find, how do you grow on Instagram? How do you grow on YouTube? And it's always just create content every day, post something. And so whenever there was a day that I didn't post or didn't have something, it would make me feel like I wasn't as good of a that's where that value system I was talking about. I felt like I was valuing myself only when I was creating. And so when this kind of, when I took a look at my behavior on there, which was super recent too, it feels weird to talk about, because it feels like it's in the past now, but when I did reevaluate that, it was like, oh man, I need to take a step back and make sure that what I'm doing and what I'm creating, I'm doing it for the right reasons.
And so what are those reasons?
Well, for me, I've always wanted to stay in touch with my creative side, but also inspire everyone else to be creative. I feel like, we kind of go through these stages in life. And at some point, when people start finding their jobs, they stop trying to fulfill those hobbies, or they lose their hobbies, or say you have children, and it becomes a lot harder to pursue those hobbies.
And also learning. People, it seems like we stop having that drive to learn new things. Yeah. And I want to interrupt for a second, because I think it's important to share with the people listening is that one of my experiences of you is that you randomly, maybe not randomly, but in my eyes, you were like, okay, I'm going to learn how to make videos.
Right.
So you didn't know how really to make videos.
Right.
You were drumming. At that point, we were playing music together, and you were like, guess what? I'm going to learn how to make videos. Yeah. I was like, okay, that's cool. And you were like, no, I'm really going to learn how to make videos. Yeah. And you just had this commitment to it. And you had even talked to me about it's okay. I'm probably going to suck a bit at first. Yeah. But I'm going to learn. And so, watching you from that point, because I am on your social media, to where you are now, it's insane. It's the content that you're creating is
Thank you.
100 times better than the content when you started. But when you did that, you had this you had this perspective of like, I'm just going to do it to learn. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to be judgmental or critical of myself in what, it looks like at first.
Right.
And I think that I need to keep learning and be better. And I want to inspire others to just create stuff, even if it's not great, just to create.
Great. Yeah. That's really nice to hear.
And I've seen you do that.
Yeah.
And now, like the photo that you posted a couple days ago of Kamloops was like mind blowing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was really, really beautiful.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I did. So I am one of those kids that had a video camera, between my parents had one. So when I was a teenager, I was always making films. And then when it became graduate and what are you going to do with your life? It was always the thing in the back of my mind. I was like, oh man, I wish I kind of went to film school or went to music school. But I was always taught that those were jobs that would be really great if you wanted to live a poor life, a poor kind of perhaps struggling existence. And that kind of scared me off. But that was always in the back of my mind, is like, oh, I wish I kind of had pursued those pursued that. And then, you bring us up to when, say, Instagram was available. All of the gatekeepers are no longer there. And I realized that, you can go to school, sure, but when you get out of school for filmmaking, you're still going to be in the same spot that I was in trying to make films. So I just realized, why don't I just start making films? And if I, instead of focus on the quality of it, if I just say, I want to make 100 films on my YouTube channel, then by the time I get to 100, I should be a pretty decent filmmaker. And so that's kind of still what my metric is. And then it's just become, for me, it's become very addictive, because each time you do it, and it's the same with music, each time you do it, you get better. And you can look back and see the progress. And even from last month and this month's videos, I've tweaked them, and they're going to be better this month than they were last month. And so that continual progression is kind of the addictive part.
It's so
for me.
satisfying.
But I think that it's a healthier, I don't know if addiction is right. I don't know if that's the word you would use for it, but it's definitely what.
It's your drive. It's what drives you to keep going.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mike, so I think about what I just said about where you kind of started, and then I'm hearing from you that the social media thing ended up becoming a bit of a problem, because there was a push to put content out. And when you weren't putting content out, you felt like a failure. Yeah. Like in that irrational part of your brain.
Yeah.
And so then you had to take a step back from social media to kind of ground yourself back and like, why am I doing this creative practice?
Yes.
And so where are you at now with it?
Now I just, I want to take it back to that, what I said earlier is, if I want to inspire people, then I should make videos to inspire people. And I also realized through the whole process of making videos is you can do, I was really focused on hey everybody, here's my life. Look at how interesting my life is. And trying to make the mundane interesting. Like I have a video of just driving to work. And here's the interesting places. And I moved through the process of making videos, I moved up to the country, and I was like, oh, what a great avenue to explore to make myself look interesting. And now I've kind of realized that it's kind of a better thing to explore things that help other people and look for what other people want to get. Like, what can I give other people to help them grow, rather than have them look at me? I've always kind of thought, who am I? Why would anyone want to tune into a vlog of Mike Erikson? If they're just scrolling through the YouTube channels, they don't know who I am. They don't know anything about me. And so it's just kind of, what it is just a battle of my ego versus just letting go and realizing that there could be a career to making videos. I could have a channel that has, enough subscribers eventually to have a bit of monetization involved with that, but I don't believe that it'll get there unless you're kind of creating for the masses rather than trying to get their attention. I mean, both of those things are required, but now I just kind of want to focus on the things that like I'm interested in the things that have helped me and I've seen help other people, and then reach out to the people who are more expert at those things and kind of maybe interview them, maybe just incorporate them into the videos somehow.
You know, this is a big shift. So as you're talking, I'm listening, but there's another part of me that's going through and thinking about how generally in social media, there is a culture of self-promotion.
Yeah.
Huge culture of self-promotion.
Yeah.
And what you're speaking about, you're not alone. And I'm
sure.
also have been part of this too, where it's like we want to be the superstar of our life. And so we want to let everybody in on our amazing life and think that people are actually quite interested in all the things we're doing. And then we also want to, I think it's called ethnograph our life. Like we want to, people are sharing like, this is my process, right? There's a lot of like, this is my process, which is cathartic. So I don't want to sound overly critical. But the point of all this is that it's very self-centered.
Yes, exactly.
If we look through most of our medias, it's self-centered. It's like, look at me, look at my life, look what I'm doing, look how interesting I am, look how cute my kids are.
Yeah.
Look at and then there's also this piece around selling business stuff. So everybody's starting their own business.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's like self-promotion of that business.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I started to get quite disenchanted with Instagram and social media because of this. And then as a business owner, I'm like, how the hell do I navigate this stuff? You know, I want to create content that is meaningful and connected. Like I want people to feel connected to me as an individual, but I'm actually not interested in being the superstar of my Instagram.
Yeah, right.
Or, you know, I don't want it to be like shameless self-promotion.
Yeah.
And then I also don't want to sell people shit all the time either, because that's not cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's truly, it is kind of a straw. I feel like we both feel the same way in terms of like both of us, like, and I think anyone really, when you start searching for kind of happiness, you actually, what you're searching for is fulfillment. Mm-hmm. And fulfillment comes from helping people. And
for most of us, yes.
Okay, sure, yes. Yeah. Like I recently read, or I'm halfway through a Seth Godin book, and he's really good at kind of exploring these avenues. Like, yes, maybe you'll be selling some things, but if you're selling things so that you can help people, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like we also have to have our relationship with money has to improve as well. So like making money is not a bad thing. Being capitalistic has its problems. Capitalism has its issues for sure. But if you work within that system so that you can give more back, I think that it can be a really rewarding system. And that's just talking about the business, like when you're selling your business. But yeah, like everything you said, 100%. It's all like, look at me serving. And Seth Godin, I mean, he talks about you find your tribe and then solve their problems. And so that's how I'm starting to look at my videos, to put it more succinctly.
What's his book called, Mike? Sorry to interrupt.
Well, he's got so many, and I don't...
What's the one you're reading?
The one I'm reading is... I'll have to tell you afterwards. I'll look it up on my phone.
Right, because you are reading 2 books right now.
Yeah, I do. I have 2 on the go. I think Purple Cow is fairly similar, though that's his big one. But he puts out a lot of books. So, and they're all like marketing. So this is kind of the first marketing book that I've read. But I really like Seth Godin in interviews and whatnot. He seems like he has a good spin on how to look at it without looking at, you know, making money is a negative.
Because that can feel kind of gross when you think about it that way.
When
it's a negative.
Think about it, yeah. But it's not necessarily. That's a relationship I need to get better at.
So, Mike, I wanted to say too, so now you're trying to shift your attention away from this place of look at me, I'm going to...
Yeah.
what is that from? Anyways, I'm like getting a reminder of a pop culture reference, but then I'm actually really horrible at this, so I'm just going to leave that there.
Yeah.
So now with your videos and your music, it's more about helping others and creating content that's actually inspiring by solving problems or helping. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But also, actually, to back it up a little bit, like that look at me thing, and like one of the shifts that I had back at the very beginning of it, a really profound realization that I had is that nobody really gives a shit about you. Nobody cares about you. Like, that's a big part. I've been going to a lot of ecstatic dances lately. You're familiar. Have you been to any of those?
Yes, just not in New Parenthood.
Right. And kind of the big part about ecstatic dance, I feel like, is realizing that nobody cares about you. You can go there and make a fool of yourself and dance, and in doing so, you'll kind of release and break a lot of these kind of chains that you've built around yourself, and realize how much more free you can be when you're not worried about how you're not worried about what you look like walking down the street, because the reality is nobody's looking at you when you're walking down the street.
No, they're looking in their own reflection.
They're looking at you and and even when they see you, they're seeing themselves in you. Like, oh, that would look dumb on me, or great. We're all really self-centered. And so to put out content where you're the star, well, that doesn't work because people don't see themselves in you. So you have to kind of, I believe, content that kind of hits a little bit harder is the stuff that kind of like the same thing in comedy, something that is true, something that everyone holds as a truth, and you can kind of explore with people rather than like force it down their throats or whatever.
That's really cool.
And so that's what enabled me to start making videos that sucked. Like becoming okay with being shitty at something in the beginning is because who cares? Like, maybe nobody will watch these. Maybe I'm the only one that watches these, and maybe my parents or whatever. And even that was a struggle at the beginning. How come I only have like one subscriber and there's 3 people right here in my family? Anyways. But getting over that like nobody's watching anyway. So like, it's just do the thing that you want to do it, because you don't want to look back and regret that at the end of the day. I think that's the scariest thing. That's the thing that drives me the most, is regret and trying to eliminate the regrets that I can right now. That's the way that I look at my video. And so, yeah, I'm really stoked on it. And it's also kind of created this other thing, and I don't know if this might be similar to you now that you're doing a podcast. You're also an excellent musician, and music is a big part of my life as well. And so now I'm putting all this energy into video. I'm like, oh, but I'm leaving my music behind. I put in so much time, and there's all that sunk cost, the sunk cost fallacy that comes into play. Like, I wasted all that time if I'm not doing music. And something I really appreciated about your podcast I listened to about breath work. I don't remember the gentleman's name. Corey. And no, actually, that was the Mike Turner podcast. And you guys were talking about art is art. And that actually was kind of a nice little moment for me to be like, oh yeah, art is art. And just like how Kobe Bryant, R.I.P., used to work on dance lessons in the off season to help his basketball game. I kind of now have reframed it also that like doing video might help making music. Like, I think that as long as you're kind of exploring these creative channels, then eventually they all meld together. And in doing so, in exploring your creativity with full freedom, in fact, you're actually kind of becoming your fully realized self and becoming more of the individual that people will eventually look up to. Like the people that do become famous or whatever, that walk into a room and just like have an aura the reason that why they're like that, I believe, is because they've become self-actualized and they do something so well because of all of these experiences they've had that have found their place.
It's the adaptability and versatility.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, it's one of the things that I found with doing a podcast is that sometimes with music, I can get hung up on how I want that to look.
Right.
Right. Like for me, it's always been this like, oh, it's got to feel good. And like when I write a song, it needs to just come to me in this way. And when I play music at a show, it's going to feel great. And so I was really attracted to the feeling that I get. Yeah. Right. That cathartic, connected feeling, and not attracted to the work. Not attracted to the practice, not attracted to the method, not attracted to the process.
Right.
And so it would always be on this intuitive basis, which is amazing. However, moving into this space, into a podcast space, there's work.
Yeah.
We set up,
sure.
We edit, I organize, I schedule, I think about who I'm having on, I'm curating it. It's a completely different part of creativity.
Yeah.
And while I have left music somewhat to the side in the sense that we're not performing, now I'm going back into my music practice with, of course, the support of Mike. And now I have a completely different method to songwriting that I'm working on, which is not one that is like beautiful and intuitive and, oh, this feels so good, I'm going to write this song. It's very method based.
Right.
Because I have a goal of a full album in 2 years. And so if I want to have an album out in 2 years, I have to write. I have to produce. And I can't do it on a whim. And when you're a parent, and you know this more than me, it's like, when do those times come where you get to sit down and play your guitar and have all the joy for 3 hours and come up with this beautiful song? It's like you have 45 minutes. You have 45 minutes to do music. What are you going to do? You're going to practice your guitar? You're going to work on that song? You're going to work on production for that song?
Yeah.
Are you going to curate a show?
Yeah.
Like, figure it out, because you got 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Or else music doesn't happen for me.
Yeah, actually, I really value my kids. Of course I value my kids. I really value, like, when I had kids, is it really accented how much my time's worth. And I pretty much, like, I used to play a lot of video games, and as soon as my first was born, I basically I don't hardly ever play video games anymore, just because it feels like there's so much more I could be doing, or I just have such a small amount of time in order to be the most productive. I want to take advantage of that. And yeah, same thing, like sometimes, like I'll schedule, you know, an hour to be creative when I'm working from home, an hour in the morning to be creative. But it's work. It's not always easy. It's not like I just sit down and, like, if I'm writing a song or if I'm writing a script for it, it doesn't come easy. Like, that part of it is the work, and it's the practice. Like, in order to get better, you just have to do that more. And
it will start to feel fulfilling in a different way.
Definitely.
In a different way.
Yeah. And it does, you know, you get to the end of the week, and if you've done that and you've banged your head against the wall, but you still have, even if you're not going to use them, if you have melodies or if you have scripts that suck or whatever, I think that it still does lead to a better something down the road. Mm-hmm. Or at least it makes you feel fulfilled that, like, at least I'm doing it. I'm doing the thing that I wanted to do. I'm not just, you know, watching Netflix or whatever and I don't know. I don't want to say wasting that time, but
regretting sitting
it
there
a little bit.
Okay, so I'm going to bring us back. So so when I met you, it was Jude was your second child.
Yes.
Yeah. And you were having anxiety. You had this realization, and then you started making big changes in your life. One of those changes was more creativity.
Yes.
More creative practice. And so do you...
Scheduled creative practice.
Okay, scheduled.
That's a big part of it, I think.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I say that. I'm not that good at it either. But anyways.
But so it became a priority.
Yes.
So a creative practice, that was a priority.
Yeah.
And so with your creative practice, even though sometimes your anxiety can show up in that practice when you have too many confines or constraints or expectations for yourself, or social media becomes too much of the focus.
Yeah.
Do you find that when you're being creative, your anxiety is less? Or do you find that you feel more like less anxious, or like where's your anxiety at now? That's what I want to know.
I'm feeling more fulfilled when I'm being creative, but I think that a meditation practice and yoga practice and working out and like the maintenance stuff is what makes me feel better about my anxiety. It's definitely something I need to work on constantly, and if I don't, then it creeps up again, and I either have insomnia bouts, or I get really anxious. My body tells me when I haven't been paying attention. It's such a catch-22, because like you meditate and you do yoga and then you start feeling better and then you stop doing those things because you feel better.
Yes.
And then it just gets worse again.
And then you're like, surprise, there it is. So meditate, yoga, working out. So those are huge.
Yeah.
We talk about them lots on the podcast, but they're good because they help our nervous system calm down, which is what we talked about in the last podcast. But I've also struggled with anxiety the majority of my life, and I don't think I've shared that yet on the podcast. But it is this dance, right? Where it's when I'm not meditating or doing yoga, and especially if I'm not working out.
Yeah, that's the one I found the biggest one.
Biggest. My anxiety creeps up, and I notice things like, okay, for example, a couple weeks ago, I was swimming, doing laps, and I just started getting these crazy catastrophic thoughts. Yeah. Like Tim was going to meet me at the pool, and I thought, what if he gets in a car accident on the way here?
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, whoa, that is weird. It's been a long time since I've had that thought. And then as I'm moving throughout the day, I start noticing more of these they're very catastrophic thoughts. And now, because I understand the anxiety that I experience, I don't like calling it my anxiety, but the anxiety I experience, I understand it. I can look at that and say, that's information. Of where I'm at. Versus before, it would be like, oh my God, my anxiety's out of control again. And it would also, I would have all these feelings about having anxiety again. At least now I can get to this place of, okay, how many cups of coffee did I drink this morning?
Totally.
First question, always. Honestly.
Yeah.
How much weed have I been smoking?
Yeah.
Another one.
Yeah.
Because as much as like weed can help anxiety in the beginning for me.
Yeah.
And I actually would love to talk to you about this, but
yeah, we'll get there. That's a big one.
How it feels like it helps me in the beginning.
Yeah.
But then if I'm using weed regularly, it's like the worst thing for my anxiety.
You're not processing anything.
Yeah. So those are the two things I look at. And then I ask myself, when's the last time I sat in silence? Whatever that looks like. It doesn't need to be in a fancy meditation pose.
Yeah.
Like, and the other thing is, when's the last time I've been outside?
Yeah.
For an extended period of time, not in the middle of the city.
Sure. Yeah.
When's the last time I worked out? I look at all these things and I think, no.
Yeah. Well, as you start getting busy, like the things that you need are the first things that kind of drop off for some reason.
Yeah.
Like there's that good quote that when you're not stressed out, you should meditate for an hour. And when you are busy, you should meditate for 2. And I think that's true. But I think that like through yoga is really how I got learned about meditation in the first place. Just, but through meditation, learning to listen to your thoughts rather than live in your thoughts. So, like anxiety is just living in the future. It's never a nice future you design for yourself. It's like a terrible future where everything goes wrong. And if you can just, I guess, pay attention and catch it, you just catch it sooner. It's not like I don't have those thoughts anymore. Just now I have them or you have them and you're like, oh, well, that's a sign because I haven't been doing the maintenance on myself, for myself. But in that me time, man, you can't fill somebody else's cup up if yours is empty, right? So
yes, and you say that, and right now that's a big part of my process is in this work as a counselor. There's so much space being held, and not just space, like it's active work, active listening, working with people. And in the past, when I wasn't a mom, I'd have more leeway of not taking care of myself in the best way.
Yeah.
But now I leave work and I go home and care for a young child.
Yeah. Which can be very frustrating or
exhausting.
I mean, yeah, it's everything. I mean, it's just amplifies everything because you're tired. I mean, basically it comes down to, actually, you know what? We didn't even talk about sleep, but sleep is probably even above exercise.
Yes.
Getting enough sleep is probably like the biggest thing you can do if you can change anything. I'm terrible at it.
Joni's terrible at it. I'm just kidding. She's getting better. But yeah, you're right. It's sleep. Well, and there's many things, but it's
all things.
It's all things.
It's all those things.
It's all of them. And so taking care of yourself becomes really important. And what's also important is not making that self-care another thing that stresses you out, right? Because that's the problem as well, is that we have to be realistic about what we can do for self-care in our lives at the moment.
Yeah.
And I say that to new parents because as a new parent, a parent of 3 kids, when you're that busy, sometimes you don't get to go to the gym for an hour. Yeah. And you can get really angry about that. One of the things that I struggled with the most in new motherhood was the fact that I actually couldn't access all the things that I did for self-care.
Yeah.
I couldn't go to the gym.
Yeah.
At least it felt like I couldn't. I couldn't go and play a show.
Yeah.
I couldn't really have a band practice.
Yeah.
I couldn't go to a yoga class.
Yeah, and I guess it is, you get a little bit resentful, but then you also have to just do what you can.
That's right.
You have
a bath.
Do what you can.
5 minutes of breathing. Yeah. Whatever it is.
Work out every day, even if it's like, when I was working from home last year, it was just like, I wasn't doing anything. And whenever I would think about doing a 15-minute workout, I'd be like, well, what is that? That's 15 minutes. But then I realized, that's still 15 minutes a day more than I'm doing now. So I just kind of started doing that. And then actually, once you start exercising, you kind of want to do more. But it's still that struggle. Like maybe you don't have the time to do more. But maybe you can also design your life in a different way and incorporate your kids into whatever you need to do, right?
Yes, whether that's walking with them outside or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, what it comes down to, though, it's still work, right? Like, it's still easier to turn on the TV, put on Paw Patrol, and, just take a moment. And sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes you need to do that to take a break. But sometimes the last thing you want to do is take your toddler out for a walk around the neighborhood. But 5 minutes in, once you're out there, you're like, oh, this is exactly what I needed. I find anyways.
Yes.
It's just like, I don't know, it's just weird that your mind kind of plays tricks on you, or maybe it's laziness or whatever that is. Joe Rogan, you're a Joe Rogan fan, I know. Joe. I wouldn't say closet, but
I'm coming out of the closet. I've been sharing with people. I am a massive Joe Rogan fan.
But what does he say? Like fighting your inner bitch, or like overcoming your inner bitch. And I think that is like it's a good way to put it, because it's just always there saying, maybe you should. You deserve that whole chocolate bar.
You don't actually need to go outside. Maybe a better way. Sorry, Joe, but like inner bitch isn't really the best way to put it. Like I always say, you have to commit to 5 minutes of something or 10 minutes of something. Mm-hmm. And then once that 5 minutes is up, you can reevaluate. Okay, do I want to do this? So that's how I get myself to do things. It's like, okay, I really don't want to do this, but I'll commit to 5 minutes of it.
Yeah.
And if at the end of 5 minutes, I'm like, I really don't want to be outside anymore, or I really don't want to meditate anymore, or I really don't want to do this breathing thing, I can stop. Yeah. But do I stop? Most of the time, not.
Probably not. That's right.
So that's a big part. So inner bitch, or
it's like almost just starting. Like starting's the hardest part.
It's the hurdle. It's the hurdle.
In anything that I've done, starting is the hardest thing to do. And that's right, the hurdle. Yeah.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Depends. Yeah.
Okay, so that was one of your most challenging experiences. Having
that whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, life is really basically life is my challenge.
Yeah. Okay, so we haven't quite said this, but you overcame that challenge. How? Like, what was it that you did to overcome that place in your life?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think For me, honestly, it was kind of reframing this self-work that I used to think of as selfish. It was reframing it as something that was necessary for me to live like a life where I could be available for my family and be the best version of myself if I practiced the things, the meditation, the walking. Not every day do I get to do everything, but just I have more tools all the time to be in my quiver to be able to like constantly kind of push the anxiety down or whatever. So, yeah, it's a really tough question to answer, but I think that kind of definitely reframing selfishness with self-care.
And how then you can be available for your children and your wife.
Yeah, and also reflecting on, I've been with my wife for quite some time, and so we have a history. We have a big history. So as we evolve as people, so does the way we see ourselves. But I have a really good gauge of who I am actually being versus who I think I am with my wife, because she'll tell me who I'm actually being. She's not, I love my wife so much for that. It's kind of a litmus test of, you know me differently than she does, because there's a lot of things that she's seen me do that you didn't even know me yet, right? So you might have this perspective, and to in some degree that's a pro and a con, because it's hard to overcome some of those histories. But I think that it is a good, like I say, litmus test to litmus. I don't know what it is.
I don't remember. Litmus
to gauge how am I showing up?
How sincere are you?
If this is where I think I am, how does that relate to who you think I am? And in the past, that was a huge trigger for me. Whenever something would come up that was showed me in a light that didn't reflect back where I saw myself.
Where your intentions were?
Where my intentions were. I always want to be a good person. I always want to show up for people. And when that was put on the table, no, you're actually not showing up for me when you do this. When you buy a new camera from Amazon and you don't ask for my permission, that is a trust bond that we have. And if you want to show up for me, that's what I need from you. So there was quite a big portion of our life where I would just fight that and fight her feedback instead of valuing her truth. Right. I would try to show her how she was wrong. Right.
And so then she would be communicating hey, this isn't working for me.
Yeah.
And then you would be yeah, but
it's still me, and I'm,
I meant it to be this way, but your experience is that way. Yeah, my intention means more than what you're experiencing right now.
Yeah. And you know what? I say this like it's in the past, but it still comes up all the time.
Of course. Our partners are our best test, because they're the ones that keep our feet on the ground.
Yeah, that's right.
Because we can go out and be in the world and put on, I'm not saying you're putting on a show, but we have masks. We have ways that we present ourselves, and our friends see us in this certain way.
Yeah.
But our partners see us at the end of the day when we're unraveling, and they see our irrational decisions, and they have direct impact from our decisions and who we're being. And so they can be a pretty solid reality check on hey, you know what? You're actually not that generous.
Yeah.
Or
yeah, and it can be really hard.
It's hard
to deal with those.
That's why long-term and monogamous relationship it's difficult.
Yeah,
it's a spiritual path in itself.
Totally, but it's also the reward in becoming. I mean, for seeing somebody for so long and seeing them for everything that they are, it also becomes the person that you can call on at any time, or hopefully we're always working towards a place where we're there for each other, or we're improving each other.
Right.
Collectively.
And we're
Both of
seeing
us are
each
getting
other. Like
better.
you're seeing each other, right? That's the other thing. And so when I said that it's difficult, I want to be clear. It's also like one of the most spiritually rewarding experiences because you don't get to follow that like instant gratification thing. It's like you're accountable to your partner who's saying like, hey, the way you're behaving isn't working for me, or stop spending so much money, or whatever it is, right?
Well, and I think that's like, there's a big, kind of in the circle that I'm in right now, there's a big push towards open relationships. And I feel like that in itself, I don't know, I don't want to say this because I don't want to be overly critical, because I mean, I was very interested in open relationships for a period of time, just in the way that I don't want to have ownership over my partner. I don't want to, like these jealous feelings. Why do I have these jealous feelings? I don't own them. I should be happy when they're happy and all that.
Right.
Yes. I think that's something that's good to strive for. But I also think there's something incredibly addicting about meeting somebody and them seeing you for who you are portraying.
In that moment.
And they don't have the histories. They don't have all that. So you're like, oh, you get it. You understand me. And, you know, it's called infatuation. And it's a short-lived thing.
It's lust.
And if you just move on to the next person or next thing, like that's what Tinder swiping and all that stuff is. And I've never experienced that because I've been married for like 20 years now. But with her for 20 years, not married. 18 years, actually.
Wow. Good for you guys.
Yeah.
So, Mike, I'm glad you brought this up because this has been bubbling inside me. And I was thinking today, I'm like, I wonder what podcast the open relationships versus monogamy is going to come up on, because I've been thinking about this so much.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot, too.
And I don't, to be clear, I don't want to come across as being overly critical, because I have a lot of people in my life that I love that are engaging in open relationships.
Yeah.
However, there is a part of me that is triggered by it. I'll put that out there early on in this conversation. The idea of sharing my partner brings up anxiety now that I'm even saying it out loud. Right. So I have my own unresolved insecurities about ownership and sharing.
Yes.
So I identify that.
Yeah.
However, there's this thing about lust and infatuation and the ability to gain affirmation. So when you're not in a long-term relationship, I'll speak from my own experience. In a long-term relationship, you don't get to have the ongoing infatuation and affirmation, right? It gets pretty freaking.
Especially if you throw kids in the middle.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, you have three. We only have one.
Yeah.
But it starts to get mundane in the sense that you're just companions moving through the day, right? You're taking your turns. You're doing this. You're doing that. You're doing your best to connect and see each other. I mean, you're trying to have a sexual relationship. You're working at intimacy, intellectual, emotional, physical intimacy.
Or you should be.
Or you should, but it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard. And committing to that person and that family, despite the lack of satisfaction in that way is very difficult. Yeah. And looking elsewhere for attention and looking elsewhere for affirmation and looking elsewhere for values can feel very appealing.
Invalidating. Yeah, but I think that also, like, I don't know, I think that one of the things I've realized in life is like the hardest things, the things that take you to the lowest points, also take you to the highest points. Like it's kind of this ongoing yin-yang frequency cycle that certainly kids have shown me that. Yes. Kids will take me to a place where, like, I never expected to be a guy that would yell at a 2-year-old for dropping a bowl of Cheerios. But at sometimes, like in my weaker points, I've been that guy. I have to be like, Daddy needs to take a time out right now and recollect and be like, what's going on? Why am I yelling at a 2-year-old for dropping like, that's what they do. They drop things. So you can't expect that not to happen. Where was I going with this? So that's like the hardest point. But then, you know, like they say their first word, you know, they do things that just make your heart explode with love and like, oh my God, I'm so grateful for this moment. And I don't think you get those emotional climaxes, let's call it. I just made that up, emotional climax, without kind of the trough almost. I mean, that perfectly links up with a long-term relationship too. Nobody can make me crazier than my wife sometimes. But I think that when you we're kind of like just coming to the surface of being underwater with kids and like sleep deprivation and all this stuff, and kind of I start to see, oh man, there's actually some free time that's about to open up in our futures. And I think that all of this work that we're putting in is going to be worth it. I think that already when we don't get out very often on dates, but when we do, it's like, oh, we still like each other. This is great. Like, and I mean, that's a whole nother side of this open relationships when you have kids, especially. Like, you're going on dates without your kids, already you feel better, like reconnecting with even if it was on your own spouse. And so with somebody else, it's that same thing. Like, you're already kind of feeling this freedom to be yourself again.
Right.
And that's another thing that kind of makes it so appealing and attractive. But I think fleeting in the end. I think that surface level instead of getting into the weeds with somebody.
I think so too. And this is a perspective from being someone who's never had an open relationship.
Yeah,
so
maybe married people talking.
Yeah. But and so maybe this is a conversation that we should have with someone who's in an open relationship. But sitting on the sidelines, I struggle with that piece of it, that fleeting piece, and I also think about it psychologically, how we're wired for attachment. Yeah. And we're not wired for multiple attachments, actually.
Right.
We're wired for a few really solid attachments.
Yeah.
Right. And so when we leave our family of origins and we move into our adult lives, we attach. We attach to a partner.
Right.
And then we create our own family of origin.
Mm-hmm.
And previously we used to be in tribes, and like maybe people would have sex outside of those like companionships. I'm not sure, but it was a totally different setup than we are right now.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if you're engaging in open relationship all the time, are you really getting that attachment that you need, that grounded, secure attachment? Because we all need a safe person, and don't fool yourself by thinking you don't.
Yeah, and I think that obviously, I think it can work. I mean, I've met people who have been in open relationships for a long time.
Yeah, it obviously can work for some people.
I think that both systems work. I think that just those reconnecting, those moments, those Monday morning or Monday evening meetings where you say, how are things going? They just become that much more important. But,
yes.
I mean, even saying that aloud, I feel like it's really important in my relationship the way it is right now. And we don't necessarily get there that often, but we should. Maybe it's just as important.
To each their own. I guess the thing is that I don't think that it's my path spiritually or personally, at least not at this place, but also I'm like in the thick of new parenthood.
Yeah.
And I would love to sit down and have a long conversation with somebody about open relationships and how that works. But yes, we're in a similar circle, and it's a big thing right now. And, there's a few of us that aren't in open relationships. And I think it's the ones with kids and family.
I think it's appealing because it's outside of the norms. And we're kind of like, we're like through the internet and seeing how the rest of the world works and observing things and getting the truth behind things, just seeing how healthy our relationships are. And it's kind of, it's interesting to explore different ways of living. I see tribalism coming up really strong right now. Communes have been big for a long time, I suppose, but just kind of getting back to the land and that becoming actually important to our future on this earth. I think that it's appealing. I find it appealing too, like to think of like living in a small tribe. One of the reasons we moved to a little community outside of town is to get that community feeling. I'm not really into the organized religions, but I see the appeal of them, to show up on Sundays and see all of the people who are in your tribe and help each other out. And I think that's what it's all about. So living in different ways and exploring different ways to live, I think that it's really important right now. Because certainly we don't have it figured out in North America. We've gone kind of a long ways this way, whereas you see tribes in the Amazon are living the way that they always have. And there's right and wrongs with both methods. And I think that it's nice. I think millennials, I credit to like just exploring. Me, like whenever somebody says this is the way it is, they're like, "What? It doesn't have to be. Let's try this."
Yeah,
I'm just like, "That's awesome."
And it's
great.
where we need to be.
Yeah,
it really, really is, and that's a really interesting perspective, Mike. Because in our society right now, we're actually really struggling with boxes, right? People really want to have defined boxes of your politics, your gender, your relationship status, your income, and then there's fighting between people from different boxes. Like this way's the right way, this way's the right way. And then there's all this movement of people that are like, all the ways are okay. Right? Well, or let's try this way and that way.
Every time that I like see somebody who's in their box and I explore that box further, the walls dissolve. Mm-hmm. That gray area gets so much bigger. The people who are for this pipeline have a point. The people who are against the pipeline right now, this is pretty topical. Hopefully people know what I'm talking about. But like, all of these battles, this is the right way, this is the wrong way. I feel like the more black and white it is, the more ignorant it is. Mm-hmm. It's not very many things in life that are so black and white. Everybody's the good guy in their story.
Mike, yes. And for so long, as humans, we've required black and white to function.
Yeah, we do. And we do today too. I mean, that's
we do. But I think that this is where the evolution is happening in our own, in the human experience, is that we're starting to think, okay, maybe there's actually a lot of gray area.
Yeah.
And more than one person is right.
Yeah.
And there's no real right answer.
Yeah.
There's no one God. There's no, and it's a big step.
It's hard to live that way fully, though. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's not. I feel like it is fully. It's hard to fully live that way.
Well, it's less structured.
Yeah.
I mean, even let's just even reflect to what we were talking about like 3 minutes ago about open relationship, and we're both like, it's this way feels better. This, the thing about boxes or black and white thinking is that we can leave it. Yes. Right? Like, this is the right way, so I can leave it. Yes, and there's security in that, whatever that is, whether it's like...
Yeah, I've defined that. I know what it is.
Right, it's wrong.
There it is.
This is the right way. This is the wrong way.
Yeah.
If you pull that out, then that means, like, what if I don't actually know?
Yeah.
And what does that mean for my...
Anxiety spikes through I don't know.
What does that mean for my nervous system, right?
Yeah.
So I think part of this is also... the way that we're biologically wired, because we are wired for safety and security. And so if things aren't right and wrong or safe or not safe, then what does that mean?
Yeah.
For us as mammals.
Yeah. It's one of my kind of New Year's, not resolutions, New Year's intentions. Well, it was last year, but I just brought it forward, is to look at the things I'm uncomfortable with and challenge them, whether that's, public speaking or like anything that just kind of makes me feel uncomfortable, kind of try to lean into that. And one of those things certainly is gray area in life. Like maybe I need to be okay with saying I don't know more and saying that all the time, because we all don't know. Right?
Or not posting a video every week.
Yeah.
Because that's gray. It's not like structured in the plan.
Well, how am I going to get the growth if I don't? That's what they say to do. Every week you got to post your video. But exactly. You're right. It is an interesting evolution, I guess, we're going through, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, to its credit, I mean, social media has a lot of downsides, but I think that's also one of the actual upsides is people speaking their truths and you being able to hear them that perhaps you weren't even open to before, other than like family reunions or whatever when you'd get in drunk battles about
echo chambers,
Trudeau or whatever, right? Yeah.
Yes. Politic battles with family.
Yeah.
Oh,
always.
man.
That's actually the other thing about Facebook and my kind of aversion to Facebook battles now is like, I've never fucking won a battle. Not once have I ever confronted somebody that has a perspective that I'm like, that's not true. Here's what's going on. And them actually said, oh, thank you for that information.
I'm so grateful. So grateful. Oh, expert.
Yeah, expert. Yeah, you're so exact. Like we're all experts on. I mean, I think that's what kind of triggers my anxiety when I post stuff is because whenever you kind of head into that debate, and this is an interesting thing because I know that you've expressed feelings about how it's important for us to debate those people. Mm-hmm. But I just feel like a lot of the people that I'm debating aren't open to my perspective at all. They're experts in their thing, and then that makes me need to be the expert, and I'm uncomfortable being the expert because I'm not, but I'm still taking that stance, and then I get anxious about like the response or whatever it is, just because I'm not the expert. I shouldn't even have started this in the first place.
But you're having a reaction. So I think I'm pro conversation.
Right.
I'm not pro debate. So the difference is, in my mind, is debate is like you're trying to prove something to one another.
Right.
You're trying to find, when you have like a debate team, somebody's a winner.
Right.
Right? When you have a conversation.
As long as you have judges.
Right.
Yeah.
When you have a conversation is more about listening and expressing and learning.
Yeah.
So we need to have more conversations and less debates.
Sure. Yeah.
So I used to be really into student politics.
Right.
Really into student politics. I was my student union president.
Yeah. Wow.
I was part of the NDP whole thing, helping with campaigns. And I was a student union president when our school, the university, Brown University, had the longest strike in Canadian history.
Huh?
University strike,
Right.
faculty strike.
Yeah.
And, I can't remember. I think I've blocked it out. It was an extremely stressful time because our student union council took a hard stance with the faculty in a fairly conservative town.
That you were the head of?
I was the head of that.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
If you Google my name, you will see like my first
You with a sign that says...
megaphone sign.
Yeah,
McLean's articles
That's
about...
cool.
Yeah, it was also very stressful. So the reason why I brought this up, yes, it was cool. But I spent that year behind a megaphone on CBC News, like during that strike, almost every second day, walking the picket line, organizing political campaigns, sitting down with ministers in the provincial legislative. I went to Ottawa. I was the national women's representative for the No Means No campaign. Like I was in it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to make a difference in this world. I am going to campaign for the things that matter.
Yeah.
So huge social justice warrior. Like crazy.
Yeah.
After the strike happened, I couldn't go out in the community without people talking to me about my stance and people ostracizing me for what I was doing.
Right.
And I'm a people pleaser, so it was the worst situation ever. Yeah. And I actually moved to Kamloops right after that. So as soon as I finished my term, I was out because I couldn't handle being in Brandon.
That's why you left, is because of that stress of being known in the community for that.
For being so divisive as well.
Yeah.
And while there was a big part of me that enjoyed that fight, but it was the anger. I had so much anger and frustration. And I was hitting the picket lines with it and I was campaigning. And what I learned in that year is that when you yell things behind a megaphone, and when you scream things at people, and when you come at people as an expert or like you know what's right, nobody listens to you.
Interesting.
You're too emotional.
Yeah.
I mean, the people that believe you will listen to you or who feel similar.
Follow you.
Yeah.
That's what you want in a leader.
But then the question is, what is the point of this?
Yeah.
Is it to have followers?
Yeah.
Or is it to make change?
Yeah.
And so that's when I shifted my life drastically into counseling away from community activism work because I was like, I can't make change this way.
Wow.
I can make change with people individually.
When you think back, do you ever think that you were wrong in certain stances?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
So one of the things that I think about is when we took the hard stance with the faculty. I stand strongly behind supporting what was happening there, but I think that I wasn't listening enough to the students, and I went really hard on principle.
Yeah.
Versus representing the people that I had been elected to represent.
Yeah.
I also think that I would have been better off making agreements with the university president if I didn't march 50 kids into her office with a megaphone.
Yeah.
It was fun. And maybe it wasn't 50, it was 20. But still, it was in my mind, I thought that this was the way. And so I was going to do it, and I was going to do it in this way. And I'm going to stand outside the university president's office with a megaphone, and then we're going to march them in, and we're going to do sit-in.
Yeah.
And then, that's going to be on the news, and that's great because we're creating awareness. But it didn't help.
Yeah.
So I learned that, I needed to listen more, way more, and I needed to speak less.
Yeah.
And I needed to be less angry.
Yeah, because, when you're angry, you're not listening ever, right?
No.
It just kind of closes those doors.
And I had my first anxiety attack during that process,
How did that present itself?
I was in a meeting with the university president about the strike.
Yeah.
And she said something to me, I can't remember. I don't know. It was quite cutting. And then I felt like I was going to throw up. I had this huge urge that I was going to throw up. And then I went to the bathroom and this is a bit graphic, sorry guys. And I just started dry heaving. I was not throwing up. It was this, I couldn't catch my breath. And I was
Your palms get sweaty?
Totally. Yeah. And my eye bursted, blood vessels in my eyes.
Oh my gosh.
And then the people I was...
And then you came back.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Actually, I totally left that meeting. But my colleagues came and they were like, oh, crap, you need... So they actually dropped me off at the counseling office.
Right.
And then I had my first counseling session, and with this amazing, beautiful woman named Sandy McMaster, she changed my life.
Right.
But yeah, so it's just these difficult experiences, but the yelling and the anger and the megaphoning to me doesn't get us anywhere. Yeah. I think peaceful protests is a totally different thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think that protests are bad. I'm just saying that conversation is way better than debate.
Yeah. I think that protests sometimes need to happen in order to be the spark to conversation. But yeah, it's I feel the same way. It's thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. That's not awesome, but
I don't share that very often. Actually, now that I'm just wow.
You just share it with everyone.
I know. I'm I have not shared that story or that piece of my life for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had to break, it's very similar. I had to change my life because I kind of broke open, and it sounds like it's kind of the same to you. And then in rebuilding, you're just kind of oh well, what actually matters, or what's the cause of this, and then kind of you can rebuild. To something that's more healthy.
Totally.
To a direction.
And it was a really difficult place.
This is a great segue.
Okay.
To pot consumption.
Okay, we have a few minutes left. Let's talk about it.
Okay, so I'm a huge pothead.
Huge pothead?
I'm a huge pothead, have been for a long time. I hope to say was a huge pothead. I could say that within the last 3-week time frame. But ever since before that, I started smoking pot when I was 20, pretty late actually for most people. Played in bands though, and it was just very much a part of the jam culture and hangout culture. At work at the time, I would smoke pot I worked at, it doesn't matter where it was. And it just became something that became more and more a part of my life, to the degree that I couldn't sleep if I wasn't high afterwards, i.e. addiction. So I became addicted to pot. Recently, I've been able to kind of break out of that a little bit through, I think, kind of all the different things I was talking about, through ecstatic dance, through some experimentation with microdosing. And
Psilocybin?
Yeah. But the biggest thing has been breath work, and just like this short 5-minute breath work meditation that I've been doing.
The one that you posted with Doug?
Yeah, that exact one. So I know I realize I'm doing another video right now, and I have to do a bit of a disclaimer because it's not exactly the same thing as the breath work that you talk about with Corey. That's his name, right?
Yes.
I mean, I think it is and it isn't, but like there's a way to do it where you can be guided and helped along through it, and I think that's probably a bit more helpful in the end. But just for me to do these breathwork sessions and really pay attention. So what it is, so we do this breathwork for 5 minutes and then hold my breath for as long as you can, and in that you end up holding your breath for 2-3 minutes, and at the end of like 3 minutes, your mind's going nuts, just like breathe. You need to breathe because you're not used to not breathing. And I believe, I'm still kind of analyzing this, but I believe that has kind of made me think of all of the different triggers that I have in my life that are telling me to do the like unhealthy behaviors, such as smoking pot, but also drinking, like having beers at the end of a stressful day. Even maybe being rude when I get home because I'm not thinking about my actions as much.
Just that reactive thing.
Yeah, reactive, exactly. And thinking, and I think this has made me kind of concentrate more on the impulses that come in that make me kind of react in a traditional manner and be like, oh, I don't actually need a joint right now. I just am telling myself I need to. And it's kind of made me look at it way differently. And I've been able to sleep through this. Also because I'm, through a breathwork meditation, I'm also meditating more.
So are you doing this on your own, or are you doing it with
I do it on my own. I just set a timer and then...
but Doug taught it to you?
Doug taught me. Yeah, he was the first person to kind of show it. Well, I mean, I was experimenting, like Wim Hof. Yeah. I know who he is, and I've been watching his videos for a long time. But yeah, I've been kind of doing it in the sauna as well. Like whenever I have a moment, I'll kind of experiment with it because it's challenging. But then it's also something that automatically kind of puts you in this meditative mindset because it's challenging and you can't really think about too many other things.
You have to focus on that. Cool.
But just yesterday I did one in the sauna and kind of broke down and started crying. And it made me think about like, where did that come from? And then it made me analyze, there's some difficult things happening in my life right now. And it made me like, oh, actually that was a bigger thing than I let it be. And that's what I realized what pot's been for so long for me is just this mask. It's just been like something that I used to call in the name of medical treatment, treating myself with pot has actually just been masking my emotions. It's been avoidance. It's been escapism. Oh, I'm starting to feel big emotions. Well, let's go smoke a joint and get rid of those right away because that's uncomfortable. And so in kind of doing these breathwork things, it's uncomfortable in itself, and then it's kind of allows me to be more uncomfortable with kind of the rest of my life.
So your discomfort tolerance is increasing because you're having to do these things that require focus and discomfort. I mean, not breathing.
Yeah.
Wow, cool. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are listening to that and you're like, wow, that's really cool stuff, breathwork, you can check out the podcast with Corey because he talks a bit more about that. I'm very intrigued about breathwork, and it's something that I also want to try doing more in my life. So now that makes me think about pulling that Band-Aid.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
It's a challenge.
Another challenge. But it is something once you learn how to do, just like yoga, you can do by yourself, I think. Obviously, there's something more you can get out of it. I look at it the same way as like a counseling session that includes a high dose of psilocybin, where you can kind of work through these things. It changes your psychological perspective for a period of time, so you can kind of
open up to the idea.
Instead of hitting the wall the same way every time, you can kind of come at a different angle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also something that I would love to explore more is therapeutic use of psilocybin. I don't know a lot about it, but anyways, we'll leave that there.
Yeah.
So Mike, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited that you even invited me to come on. You have such a great list of people that have been on. I'm like, oh, now this is going to be Mike Erikson.
Oh, whatever. You're great.
Well, thank you.
And I think you have a lot to offer. Because
I think that this is an amazing thing that you're doing here. And it's been very helpful for me to listen to the other people in the community, all doing just amazing things. So I give that back to you. I'm just so appreciative and grateful to be here.
Thanks. Well, and I just want to say that I wanted to have you on here because I think that I was saying to Tim last night that you're somebody who is living the experience of living, right? So I've been your friend and you're fully in it and you're experiencing the discomforts and you're shifting your life and doing new things and you're building an awareness. And so that's why I wanted you to come on is because I really feel that you have a lot of wisdom just in living your life. And I've been able to see that on social media, even though maybe we were being critical about the me. I've enjoyed watching you change and grow and create a life that's more fulfilling to you. And so I think it's important for people to hear those stories too. So thanks for being here today. If people want to connect with you, they can check you out on social media.
I'm Beatnik Media on Instagram and same thing on YouTube. But if you follow me on either one, I will pump the other one, so you'll be able to find me. I'm also Beatnik Media on Facebook. I have a group there. But all of those, they're all an experiment. I'll see where they end up, but it's something that I'm still improving at. So
awesome. And then Mike Erikson lives in Kamloops, so maybe if you see him on the street, you could say hi too.
Yeah.
Or in the sauna.
That'd be great.
He's a sauna chatter. I'm just kidding.
I'll gauge it. I always gauge it. Like, are you a chatter or not?
Mike, I'll chat with you any day in the sauna. Okay.
All right, that's great.
Okay. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day.